Unless you want to do an intro. If you think
No.
it's important to do an intro, you can do an intro. But you can
I don't like
always add
intros.
it. You can always add that.
If I would see something and they lose me halfway through the intro,
Right.
if I would watch something and they start saying welcome next, because I say most videos are catering to people who are laying in bed at 11:30 at night, just scrolling through things numbly. That's the audience.
And that's the truth of the matter. There's nothing.
That's you trying to break through.
So you have to do something, that it's going to be new and exciting and interesting.
Yeah, you have to catch them within 4 seconds.
The thing that's going to separate us from everybody else is if we are able to catch what's exciting and interesting to us and relate that and translate it to someone else.
Yeah.
They also may find it interesting and exciting. And I'll tell you what's exciting to me is, why are we doing this? So this came up to me when I made a call to you. I was sitting in the office and I thought to myself, I want to do a podcast. Okay, I want to do a podcast with somebody. Sitting and pontificating myself, I'm not interested in doing that. I figured, who can I do
That we have marriage for.
Exactly, exactly. Where, of course, you don't get to say much because I played a part of a Jewish husband.
Yes.
Usually in my marriage. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, so who can I do this with? There's a number of people here in the area, but I know we've had a relationship before.
Yes.
And I thought, let me give Sruli a call and see if you'd be interested in doing a podcast together. And then you say to me, yes. You jumped at it and you said yes. Okay? So I started to think, why? Why is this important to you that we do something like this? Why did you say yes for?
Don't ask me. I'm going to change my mind. I don't know.
No,
it's, and we've spoken about it. It's the idea of feeling there's a message, there's a version of reality that I see the world in, and it's powerful to me. And being able to share that, being able to talk about that, being able to bounce that off, it enriches the experience for myself. And I think it makes the world a richer place. And this is something that I've learned also from the Rebbe. The Rebbe was always like, in history, before you wrote a book on any Talmudic major discussion, you'd have to be a master. You'd have to be... The Rebbe took these young teenagers and said, if you have a thought or a half a thought, write it down.
So let me understand. So you think that you have something important to say. That's what you're saying, Sruli. You have something important to say, and you want to get the message out, which is okay. It's perfectly okay, because that's what all podcasts are.
Yes.
No one gets onto a podcast thinking to themselves, look, I have nothing to say, and I'm just going to say something even though there's nothing being said. I think if you believe that you have something to say, but I want to take it one step even further than that.
Yes.
I want to go something inside of us that pushes me and maybe pushes you as well, that why is there the need for me to be able to be heard out there? What is it? Why is it not enough? I mean, I teach classes. I have a little show in Long Beach. Whatever I get, I get. Why is that not enough? Why do I have this desire that I need to be able to be heard by people that I don't know, I'm never going to meet? Because there's something that's driving me that I need that. I need that. So that need is what interests me. Why is there that need? Now I know why it's for me. Why there's that need? Because I grew up in a very quiet home. My parents were Holocaust survivors. There were hardly anything ever spoken in my house. We didn't have
Between
deep
your
discussions.
parents, there was no conversation.
There was small conversations, but nothing ever really, I never sat down with my father and had a real deep conversation about life. He was already, my father, when I was born, already was an older man. He was in the mid-40s already, gone through the Holocaust, lost his whole family. And I grew up with an older sister, who was a little older than me, and she had went one path, I went a different path, so I was alone. So I've always had this need to be recognized, to be heard. And, I want to be heard. I had no voice, for anybody. I mean, there were families. I grew up in Montreal. I have 5 brothers, 6 brothers, and I always wanted that. I always wanted to have a brother. I mean, just someone that, I used to play ball at my stoop for hours myself.
Wow.
I mean, just hours myself throwing the ball against the stoop. And so I developed friends, so we had friends, and it was great, no problem growing up. But that need to be heard is always part of who I am. And when I called you and I said, hey, Sruli, you want to do this? And you said yes, what I was starting to think is, what is your motivation?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you need this for? We're not going to get paid for this. We're not going to we're not going to sign a Joe Rogan contract, at least not in the next several weeks. And we're not going to hit a million listeners. So what was it? What is it? Maybe there isn't.
No, that's a good question. And in a similar way, yeah, I think the word is significance. And there's a embedded desire for a person to be manifested, to be. And where I grew up, you talk about family. I mean, I was a middle child.
There you
And
go.
I
That just
was
explains
stuck.
everything.
I was stuck there in the middle. Also, I had two older brothers who kind of were together, and I can say this because I know they're not going to be watching the podcast. And
You never know.
Yeah,
You never know.
I know. And so there I was, and another thing that I think is important that I've tried to, and really, I mean, the Torah speaks about this. When a person says they have a message, they have something they want to share, there could easily be a self-defeating mindset, like, well, who am I? What am I going to say? And
So true.
but I try not to listen to that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's a Torah perspective. I don't think it's an empowering perspective. It doesn't serve the world if we cancel ourselves.
No. It's unhealthy.
It's unhealthy.
It's unhealthy to do that. I mean, and unfortunately, many people are suffering that. Like, who am I? What have I done? What have I really done in the world? Those famous story of the Alter Rebbe with the Ayeka, of where are you in the world? And people take that, and it's a downer for most people, because you start thinking to yourself, I could have been a contender.
Yeah.
I could have been so much more than this. And that's a very unhealthy situation. I think the Torah is exactly the opposite. The Torah is empowering you. Bishvili nivra olam. The world was created because of me, not in an arrogant, narcissistic way, but just in a way that, you make a difference. That, and part of that, I think, is, like you had mentioned before, the key word of significance, that we as human beings, and it's not because of arrogance or we have to be better than somebody else, but it's just we crave that idea of someone giving us a pat on the back, the idea of someone saying to you, hey, you know what, really, you did a great job, you made a difference in my life. I mean, think about it. When you give a class and someone comes to you and says to you, really, you know what, you just opened up a new vista. I've been reading this parsha about Joseph and his brothers, for 30 years. I never thought about what you just said. How do you feel?
No, it's
you feel great. You feel fantastic. I mean, and it's not because you walk around thinking, "Oh, look at me! And here's the new Abarbanel that's it's coming down the pike." Here's
I had an inkling I was amazing, but now that's it.
I know, but that's why we have wives.
Yeah.
Because every time we step over that threshold and thinking, they remind us, say, you know what, you're still Sruli and Abba, and you're Abba and Sruli. So take it easy. But that's, I think, part of what drives and motivates people is that idea that, not that we're going to, revolutionize, podcasting, or we're going to revolutionize, Torah insights, but it's just the idea that you've lived, I've lived somewhat, and we have experiences, and those experiences we'd like to share with, with our listeners and people that can, care about listening to something like that. And I think that's something that's going to help if we're able to articulate those ideas that are simmering underneath and bubbling up and what we want to say. I think we'll
have a good time.
We'll have a good time. That's the key. And having a good time.
That's a prerequisite. Otherwise, it's exhausting. Let me ask you. You mentioned something, and so to the person that has that reaction to that story of the Alter Rebbe, right? So the story of the Alter Rebbe is this guy comes to visit the Alter Rebbe in prison because he was a rabbi in Russia, so he had to go to prison. It's part of the in order to become a rabbi,
prerequisite.
You have to learn the laws of kashrus, go to prison, and he asks the Alter Rebbe why God comes out of the Adam and Eve's sin, and they immediately go hide, and God he comes in there and he says, Adam.
that tone of voice, by the way.
He said it like that. As he said, Adam.
Right.
And he turns to Eve and says, don't say a word. And he says, "Where are you?" And Adam and Eve are like, he's asking who we are. Now they're really confused. And anyway, it says that the reason why God asked Adam and Eve, "Where are you?" because he wanted to have a soft entry. He didn't want to confront them and say, "What did you do?" Right? Which is such a powerful thing in and of itself. When you know somebody messed up and they know they messed up, have a conversation. Don't talk about the issue, right? Like, let's just talk like where you at,
Right.
which is, I mean, just the other day, I don't want to get far into this parenting thing, but my kid was screaming and my instinct was to tell him not to scream. And then I heard my wife's voice in my head saying, "We don't do that. We say, what's going on?"
Right.
Because I saw you were screaming. Why? What's upsetting you? Now a whole different conversation because he knows he shouldn't scream. I know he knows, whatever. So this guy asks the Alter Rebbe in prison, "Why did God say, 'Where are you?'" And the answer, the Alter Rebbe gives him a soft opening. He says, "I want to know your opinion." And the Alter Rebbe says, "Do you believe that Torah is eternal?" And he says, "Yes." And that's a good topic. What does it mean, Torah is eternal? And I like to say it's like a song. Songs are eternal.
Messages, right.
Right? You know, you hear a good song from the 60s, the 70s. It's like as if it just happened. It's an unbelievable thing. And he says, well, it's God's eternal question to every human being. Where are you in life? What's going on?
Right.
And the Alter Rebbe turns to this guy and he says, a person lives 53 years and God wants to know where you're at with everything I've given you, with the opportunity, with the responsibility. And you just mentioned, a person hears that story and they're saying, wow, yeah. And it's a downer.
Right.
What would you say to somebody who all they see in that story is defeat?
Right.
It's a good question.
It's a great question. It's a great question which comes up all the time. I mean, I have this all the time, of people coming in and saying we're inadequate. We're inadequate. And I just say to them, this message is as old as wine itself. I say, figure out, see what the world would be like if you were not here. Just say, take yourself out of commission for a moment and say, I was never born. Think about what would have happened to the world if you personally would not have been born. I mean, think all along the line, how many people you've helped, how many situations that you've created, how many, your children, your family, your business, your career, your volunteerism, your learning, everything. All of these things add up to something that would have been gone. None of this would have existed if you would have not been here. And think about how the world would be. The world would be dark. So you can't tell me, even if you're saying to yourself, I'm 53 years old and I'm inadequate, I could have done so much more. Who couldn't? Who couldn't?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody could do more than they're at. That's not really the question. The question is how do I now marshal my energies for whatever I have left to be strong at the finishing line? That's to me the key. I mean, whatever. I'm a bit older than you, so you can be my kid. In all reality.
Yes.
So, but
it's
for
a touchy
me,
subject.
For me, it's like, what? I'm already on the other end of it. I'm not starting my career. I've been in this already for over 40 years. In the rabbinate. But for me, it's how am I going to end? I want to come in strong. So that's what I keep reviewing in my head. I mean, and there's so many autos I could have, I should have, decisions I made over life that, you could regret and all the things, but that doesn't get you anywhere. It just doesn't get you. And the one thing we do know from Torah is, and based upon the Baal Shem Tov's, interpretation of divine providence, is there are things that we just don't control. I mean, and those things, there's nothing you can do about them. I mean, you get rear-ended on the 405, that there's nothing that you could do about it. I mean, you were driving safely. I mean, like I drive 35 miles an hour, just to stay within the speed limit. Maybe that's why I get all the honks. I'm driving 35. Someone rear ends me. Then there's nothing I could have done about that. I mean, that's already predestined. I mean, Hashem already said that Rabbi Perelmuter on this and this day is going to have his car hit. Where we do have providence is how we react to it. How am I going to react to this situation? Will I come out screaming like a madman? Will I get angry? Will it ruin my day? Will it ruin my family's day? Or will I say to myself, look, you know what? It is what it is. I'm lucky I'm not hurt. I'm okay. My family's still okay. Is it a nuisance? Yes. Have to wait at the side. Pickup truck, tow truck has to come. But I'm in charge of my emotions. I am making the decisions. I'm not going to let it run wild and just act like a madman. And that's kind of what drives, if people can be driven that way, to just say to themselves, hey, you know what, look, I'm in charge of the situations. Don't let it get out of hand. Then you say to yourself, look, I'm not going to worry about all the oughts and all the could have beens and what should have been and the missed opportunities. Let's learn from them. Let's investigate them, but don't get stuck in them.
Yeah.
We as Jews always know we live by history, but not in history.
That's beautiful.
We live by history, not in history. As you can tell by the Torah itself, a couple of weeks ago, we were in the worst situation. We were slaves to Pharaoh. Pharaoh was killing our children, literally killing our children.
And he wasn't going to budge. Like
and not budging.
9 plagues, the guy's not breaking.
Nothing. But the interesting part is later on, what does the Torah say? Don't abhor an Egyptian. Don't hate an Egyptian because you were a foreigner in his land. I mean, think about that for a second. Really? I mean, of all the people you tell us not to hate, is the guys that were killing our children and enslaving us for 100 years, and we should not hate them? You should, don't abhor the Egyptians because you were a foreigner in his land? It's so counterintuitive even to mention something like that. Because
today we need to be able to get angry for a while.
You have to.
Right?
You have to. It'd be only natural to hate the Egyptians. But Moshe is telling us, listen, we're out, learn, but don't get stuck there. Because too many people get stuck in the hatred. And, and you can't get past that, you're never going to finish strong. You're never going to be able to finish strong. And that's why, to me, the question of Ayeka, when it does come up, the Alter Rebbe is not telling you, hey, you know what, you're a loser. Let's be honest, you're a loser, 53 years old, and look at you. Look what I've done. I've published, numerous books, have thousands of followers, and what are you? You're you're a nobody.
You're coming to me in prison.
You're coming to me, and that I don't think that's what Alter Rebbe's,
he wasn't trying to,
wasn't putting him down.
Not at all.
He was just reflecting on the idea that Hashem asks everybody, where are you? I've given you all of these possibilities and opportunities. And where are we going with it? And I think that it's an empowerment statement rather than, it's a statement to pause, reflect, but move.
Right.
Keep going. Don't get stuck. Don't get stuck in all of these autos, I could have and I not. And that's all part of what this whole podcast is really about, is giving us an opportunity. Whatever side benefit the listeners get is great. I'm thrilled and I'm honest. Whatever. If they hear something that they like, fine.
Considering the 10,000 listeners, I'm sure like a good 1,000 of them will.
Well, I'm sure, absolutely a good 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
But it's the key is for me and you, to be able to just walk and talk, and then just some ideas that are bouncing off our heads to discuss them, and if someone feels that they're getting something out of it, how much more so. Is it better for us?
It's a farbrengen. So two thoughts come to mind. One is, I like how you said, don't live by history, but not in history. There's an unbelievable shift that needs to happen every second, which is from the past to the present. While we were in the past, while the past was the present, we created that scenario. The moment we move past that scenario is God's will. And it's exactly the way it needed to be. And now we create the next scenario. So it's very hard for a person to, we look back at our lives and there's quite a few things that we deliberately made decisions that we can easily say led to this thing didn't go well, that thing didn't go well, whatever it is. And be able to say when we were before that decision making, it was us that made that decision. After we did it, God's like, this is the perfect setup for you. Yeah. You're exactly where you need to be right now. You know how many mistakes I made to get to where I am? God's like, I'm well aware, and it's perfect. And that's the Alter Rebbe, that's the Baal Shem Tov. God literally, He's recreating the entire world in the most perfect way for you to fulfill your purpose in this moment.
Right.
And there's one other thing. I have a buddy of mine that you talk about age. When you're starting out, He's younger. He still feels like, I got to get this thing started. When am I going to get into the game and whatever it is. And he's a pretty successful guy in a certain way. And he's out there and he's doing things. And every once in a while, it's like clockwork. Once a week, I get the phone call. He's like, I feel like I'm not in. I'm not doing anything. I need to get my life together. Really need to start doing things. I need to take care of my kids, my wife, whatever it is. And I said, imagine a basketball game. Big basketball fan.
Right.
So, the game's like, it's 8 minutes into the first quarter. You go over to the coach, like, hey, when am I going to go play? I need to start playing. He's like, what do you mean you need to start playing? You've been playing. He's like, no, I got to get in. I got to make some shots. I got to get some rebounds, assists.
Which happens all the time, by the way.
Yeah.
People
and he's
tell
like,
coaches that all the time.
And the coach says, dude, not only that, you've been playing, you made shots, you missed shots, you did smart moves, you're already in the game, and you need to just continue playing. And it's that same mindset, like what you said. Look back at your life. You're like, Ayeka, oh my God, what have I done? I've done nothing. Dude, you've been playing. You've been doing amazing things. And now keep playing.
But people have a tough time in changing. What you're saying now is it's a change of perspective. Right? I mean, you could look at the guy and say he's done nothing in the game, or you could say he's actively playing inside the game. For many of us, there's a difficulty, there's a roadblock in getting over that hump and changing that perspective for a number of different reasons psychologically. Number one, a lot of people like to wallow in self-pity. They think that if they wallow in self-pity, everything is going to be okay, and then you can answer, why are you not better? Well, why am I not better? Because I'm stuck in the mud. I'm not an eagle. Other people are eagles. The Lubavitch was an eagle. Moshe Rabbeinu was an eagle. The Rambam was an eagle. I'm a turkey. So I like to wallow in turkeys. I hang around turkeys. I do turkeys, even though I was born an eagle. But I decided I like to walk. I don't want to fly. I'm afraid of heights. So we like to wallow in our self-pity because that answers, why am I not building Pisum and Ramses? So when you come and you say to them, look, just got to change perspective, just think of all the good things that you've done. To them, it's painful. It's almost hard to do that and to say to themselves, well,
now you're making me fly. Now you're making me get out of here.
Right. You're making me do things. You're pushing me to the edge. Your expectations. What happened in Har Sinai, when Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, he basically said to them, I'm expecting excellence out of you. I'm giving you something that I shared with no one. No one. I mean, I could have given it to 70 nations, but I gave it to you, and I'm expecting not mediocre. Yeah, right, I'll try my best. Losers try their best. Winners go home with the Super Bowl trophy. That's, and I want you to every day win the Super Bowl for me. But most people, but who am I? You see, the Alter Rebbe writes that in the Hakdam, in the introduction to the Tanya, when he encourages the teachers of towns to teach Tanya to other people. He says, don't give me this shifla shel sheker. Don't give me this false modesty. I don't know. I can't. Who am I? You know who you are. You know who you are.
Get out there. My stomach's hurting me.
Yeah, just do it. Just go out and do it.
Yeah.
But you know what? But those are that's where the separation comes from the people, with inspiration of the Rebbe, that he didn't want the job. I mean, the Rebbe was a Talmud Chacham and could have sat himself learning for the next 60 years. He needed the headache of Hasidim, but he knew that he was not put down here in this world to sit alone in an office and to write Chedushim on the Rambam, which he would have done an excellent job,
yes.
May I say?
Yes.
May I say? But he knew that even though it's so contrary to his personality, which was an extremely private person, extremely. I mean, the people in France where he lived for a number of years even testified that they hardly knew him. He would come into davening and he would leave. He never really wanted to hang out and have small talk.
That was always a mysterious era. From the Rebbe's life to me.
Which we're going to talk about.
I mean, maybe like him and the Rebbitzin lived in Paris and France for how many years?
I mean, they went probably 5 or 6 years, I'm assuming.
That's an unbelievable, that's a long time.
Right.
And,
but again, it
was the weirdest place.
Well, those days there was a lot of displacement. From Berlin to France to the United States of America. But even as a child, I mean, as a child, his friends testified that he was not want to do even what kids did. I mean, Nachum Goldschmidt, one person that grew up in the Rebbe's town, told a story where the Rebbe's mother would actually have to pay him to go upstairs and to get the Rebbe to come out and to just hang out, play some soccer.
Be social.
She wanted him to get some fresh air. The Rebbe was always with his books and svarim. But then when it came time to make a decision, it's just the Rebbe said, okay, I mean, if this is what I'm destined to do, I'm in, and not among you. I mean, I'm all in. And the Rebbe, from that moment on, gave up his personal life. I mean, you remember in 770 how, I mean, Rebbe couldn't walk 2 feet without 15 cameras in front of his face. I mean, everything that he did, every things. But what did the Rebbe show us? That, I mean, it's hard to emulate yourself like the Rebbe because he was such a,
he was a different breed.
He was very disciplined in his thing. I mean, he was not going, didn't waste time, and he was. And a task was a task, and if I had to get a mimer ready, I'm not telling the crowd that, I'm sorry, I didn't prepare a mimer this week, but next week I'll get back to you. I mean,
it was a busy week.
It was a busy week, and I decided, me and the Rebbitzin are just going to, go to Acapulco for 2 weeks, and you guys bring yourself Yutes Kislev this year. But I think, I mean, I think we're about coming to the end of our first.
Brilliant
podcast that's going to literally change the internet. It's going to crash the internet. I think we better warn YouTube. Let's call up YouTube and let them know that this. I think that we've come at that. Look, wherever you are in life, there are a couple of things that people crave. Number one is significance. So, if you have an opportunity to bestow significance on someone, don't hold back. I mean, just do that. I mean, if you can say thank you, if you can give a pat on the back, if you can uplift someone, just call them on the phone or, text them, whatever you can do, it costs us nothing. And you never know how you've elevated someone else's spirit. And number two, I think is like we've been talking, and you said it, is that, Ayaka, wherever you are in life, that's the place where you need to be now and keep looking forward. Looking backwards is never gonna help us. You want to?
It's non-existent.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
could be a teacher, but it's almost as if what happened in your past was not even you. If you can detach to that level, so like that, because moment you make it about you, then all the blame kicks in and everything else. And then, and I think we live in a time, and maybe generations prior, they were able to swing back from that. Today, if you show somebody how they've been for the past 3 years, they're in therapy before they can even pick their head out, out of the covers.
Therapists want to harp on. Therapists want to harp on. What
they're
happened
talking about the past.
What do you want to touch?
So they're going to the past and then making us a victim.
Nothing happened. Nothing happened. So just keep trucking along. You know what? I know it's easier said than done, for a lot of people, but that's the truth of the matter is that this is what the Torah wants us to do, is keep trucking. You'll figure it out along the way. Don't get stuck with the turkeys. Fly like the eagle that you were born to be. Things will work its way out.
Beautiful.
All right.
Beautiful.
Okay, I think
L'chaim.
we hit a home run. L'chaim.
Yeah.
This was fantastic.